Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. EDDBUD here today for all you shoe enthusiasts and running disciples. I have one of my special comparison videos for you between the Hoka One One Clifton 7 and the New Balance 1080 V10. I find these shoes relatively closely matched in terms of price and also use case. A few specs for you first. I've got both of these shoes in a UK size 11.5, which is a US size 12. 300 grams or 10.6 ounces for the Hoka One One Clifton 7 and a slightly more robust 327 grams or 11.5 ounces for the New Balance 1080 V10. We got an 8mm drop in the New Balance 1080 and a 5mm drop in the Hoka One One Clifton 7. We'll start with upper first. So a partial booty construction in both shoes today. You've got some elasticated pieces that go around the tongue that lock the tongue around the foot, hopefully holding it in place so it doesn't slide around during your run. Both shoes today have some quite padded tongues, and one slight oddity in the 1080 V10, the tongue only really comes down to about here, just before the first 3 eyelets of the shoe. The rest is this stretchy knit upper that they use on the 1080 V10. It's called hypo knit, but don't worry, it won't hypnotize you. It's very stretchy here in the toe box. I shall demonstrate by putting my hand. I can't get my hand into the shoe. Here's one I prepared earlier. You can see there it's really stretchy as I push my hand up through the toe box. So like a knit upper really. But there's way more give in this upper than you get in something like the Zoomfly Flyknit, for example. Or perhaps something like the lofted Flyknit on the Infinity Run. The rest of the upper though on the 1080 is far less flexible. I do find the Clifton upper a little bit more breathable, certainly in the conditions we've got right now. I think it's about 27 degrees outside now, which for us Brits is crazy weather. Well, you know what they say, only mad dogs and Englishmen go out in the midday sun. I got back in for my run just before midday, so I was okay. Certainly a simpler upper here with less overlays. The actual N on the New Balance shoe is quite rigid actually. It almost looks like a piece of metal, like they've just sort of chopped out an N out of some metal sheet and placed it on there. Certainly having less overlays on the shoe seems to give it a little bit of a weight advantage. The heel areas in both shoes actually differ quite considerably. There's a very distinctive heel flare here in the 1080 V10 and quite a considerable counter at the end, but very little padding around the Achilles area. Kind of looks a little bit like the Beacon 3 that I reviewed a few weeks ago. Again, a heel flare here in the Clifton 7, but there's much more padding around the heel and a very solid heel counter. Must be a really solid piece of plastic in there. So if you're a fan of much more padded heel areas, then maybe the Clifton 7's for you. I found lockdown to be quite customizable in the 1080 V10. You've got a few more lace eyelets here towards the bottom of the tongue. I did find a runner's knot was needed in this shoe, mainly because of the very elasticated laces that New Balance supply with the shoe. Actually, the more and more I've used it, the upper's given a little bit, and now there's an extreme amount of upper to deal with. I'm having to cinch the shoe down quite a bit to actually get a good lockdown. Definitely a runner's knot required here. Taking all of this into account, I do feel that the New Balance 1080 V10 should take the crown in this comparison for upper. On to midsole now. So a very interesting observation was made when I took the insoles out of both of these shoes. Both of them feature an ortholite insole, which is very cushioned. I actually weighed the insoles and they came in at 30 grams, which is a lot of weight when you consider it. I think some of the perceived cushion from both shoes does come from that ortholite insole. Certainly taking the insoles out of the Hoka Clifton 7, it actually really doesn't feel that cushioned at all. I find the 1080 V10 midsole far more cushioned than the EVA one featured in the Clifton 7. A more compressive ride in the 1080 at the expense of a heavier shoe. Over my 100 miles in the 1080 V10, I certainly found that the greater heel to toe drop in the shoe was quite apparent. A slightly more exciting ride than the Clifton 7. Aside from my daily commutes, at least when I was doing that and not working from home, and easier daily miles, I certainly had quite a few faster sessions in the 1080 V10. So far, utilising the Clifton 7, I have to say that the midsole feel isn't really that different to the Rincon from last year. albeit perhaps a little bit heavier. I just feel that the EVA is just lacking a little bit here in comparison to the New Balance offering. Just doesn't feel like a shoe that I really want to pick up the pace in. A nice shoe for recovery or easy miles, but nothing else aside from that. It's an easy win for midsole for me for the 1080 V10. Just a more cushioned and responsive midsole in this one. On to outsole now. There's vast amounts more rubber here on the 1080 V10. And it's held up really well over my 100 miles I did in the shoe. Slight wear in the outer section of the heel here, and a little bit in the very front of the shoe. Aside from that, the shoe's looking really great in terms of the outsole. Very little wear at all. I would say that the Clifton outsole's looking better at this point in my testing against the Rincon from last year. Aside from a little bit of wear already on the exposed midsole, there's just way more rubber up here in the midfoot and the forefoot, and it's holding up really well. I think the slight weight advantage the Clifton has over the 1080 is partly due to the blown rubber on the outsole of the 1080. You got about an ounce difference between the two models, and I think this is mainly where that weight difference is. I found traction in the 1080 great in my winter testing of this shoe, though at times slippery on some smooth stone surfaces, especially very wet slabs. If you went anywhere near marble on this shoe, it was a slide fest. The Clifton's rubber outsole here has provided some good grip on my typical trail and pavement based routes. Traction is ample, and the wider landing platform is certainly very welcomed by a man with energy sapped legs like me. In terms of outsoles, I don't think there's an awful lot in it, so I'm going to call it a draw. It's value time. So retail price for the Hoka One One Clifton 7 is £124 and £135 for the 1080 V10. Although I've seen both shoes at just over £100 on promotions recently. In terms of value, I think the slightly more versatile New Balance 1080 V10 takes it for me. I just feel it can handle more than just sort of daily easy training. You could do some interval work in this, I don't see why not, and it would probably handle some long runs too. I think it's perhaps the heel to toe drop. It just left me feeling a little bit more energized when using the 1080. A shoe where I just felt that I could lift up the pace if I wanted to. The Clifton 7, sadly at this point for me, just doesn't really feel like a shoe that does want to go any faster than easy pace miles. I'm very aware that not all runners can afford a huge array of shoes in their rotation for all different types of runs, and thus value and versatility go hand in hand. I think improved tech in terms of the midsole here, that Fresh Foam X, a softer upper that's a little bit more accommodating, means that the 1080 V10 is the more rounded shoe here. And if you put aside that it's quite a bit heavier, 30 grams heavier in my size, I feel that it comes out on top in terms of value. There we go guys, my comparison and breakdown of the Hoka One One Clifton 7 versus the New Balance 1080 V10. Let me know your views and thoughts on this one in the comments below. A quick musical interlude. I think I've mentioned it before, but I'm a massive fan of Bernard Butler. He was the guitarist from Suede, but forged a great solo career, which went a little bit under the radar if I recall. He's produced some fantastic records and co-written loads of great songs with lots of artists over the last 20 years. But I still go back to his debut album, People Move On. I love every single track on this album. It's just so wonderfully versatile. There's some really slow, dreamy kind of ballads, and then some more rockin' kind of country tunes. I really love Change of Heart, You Just Know, Not Alone is just a fantastic rallying cry. There's also some great acoustic interludes on there, with tracks called You Light the Fire and I'm Tired. Do check this one out, it's a real gem from back in 1998. Bernard Butler's People Move On. Thanks for watching through to the end of the video guys, I very much appreciate it. If you haven't already, come and join us over on Strava at the EDDBUD Runners United group. There's loads of runners posting their runs every day and people providing lots of fantastic positive encouragement. If you haven't done so already, please hit that subscribe button and click the bell for notifications below of when new videos are launched. Don't forget to hit that like button and share this video with your running buddies. My name's EDDBUD and I'll be seeing you.